I checked my phone again. 11:13. Shit. I was still 20 minutes from home. Maybe 25 if I was being honest. This wasn't looking good. I was about to run out of time. For fuck's sake. That twitch in my right eye, the one that had been annoying me all day, was now stuck. My eye was locked in a permanent squint, and on top of that, my stomach started to gurgle and I could feel it bloating. I'd spent the last 36 hours at Izzy's because her so-called boyfriend Dan had told her he couldn't see her that weekend. He was going on holiday with his girlfriend's parents. It was over. You'd think that was clear, but no, it needed to be spelled out. We'd all been telling her for months that he was a jerk, a weirdo, and that he'd probably do something like this. But Izzy's always dramatic, convinced they were meant to be together. Fucking Dan. So I spent 2 days trying to comfort her, calling him every name under the sun, telling her she could do better. It drove me up the wall. Finally, I made up a deadline for the next afternoon so I could leave. Sounds bad, right? But I'm a witch. Not in a bad person kind of way. I mean, I really am a witch. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Wrong. Being a witch is hard work. It's all about planning, schedules, and putting in the effort. You see, witches are magical by nature. Our magic is a part of us, not something we can just tap into when we feel like it. We inherit our powers from our mothers, who got them from theirs. For reasons no one understands, this means we have to use our magic regularly. If we don't, it builds up inside us, and if it doesn't get released, we'll blow. I know what you're thinking. Surely I can just wave a wand, say something in Latin, and change my hair or something. Wrong again. First off, as a trained witch, I don't mumble in Latin, I chant in ancient Greek. Latin is pretty much useless. We use Greek, and the hedge witches use ancient Gaelic. Second, there are strict rules about when we can use magic. You might be surprised to hear this, but the witching community got tired of being burned at the stake every time something weird happened, like a pig dying for no reason or a sudden downpour on a weekend. So in the early 1700s, the top witches in Europe gathered, I think it was in Cologne, and decided that magic should only be used between midnight and 3 in the morning. It's great for avoiding angry mobs, not so great for keeping a normal sleep schedule. That's why the witching hour became such a thing. We didn't come up with it, which is a shame because it's a pretty cool name. It became popular because during those hours, every magic user in the Western Hemisphere is awake and casting spells. Honestly, if we could spread out our magic usage throughout the day, no one would even notice. But magic affects the atmosphere, especially when it's done all at once. You wouldn't notice a gentle breeze, but a hurricane would definitely catch your attention. Magic works the same way. You might be wondering why we don't just use less magic. Well, it would be fine for wizards and warlocks. They can dip in and out of magic whenever they like. Typical. But for witches, not using magic isn't so simple. It affects us in different ways. My mom, for example, gets super restless if she misses one night and starts fainting if she misses 2. Me, I just get a twitch in my eye after one night without magic. After 2 nights, my stomach gets really bad. If I don't want to spend the next 3 days on the toilet, I have to stay up until 3 at least every other night and use magic. It's the same for all witches. The symptoms might vary, but the problems are universal. That's right. Every witch in the world is always sleep deprived. All the time. I haven't had more than 1 full night's sleep in a row since I was 12. Most witches use their magic hours to either replace sleep or improve their appearance. Gone are the days of influencing the royal succession of Scotland. For us now, we're just trying not to look like a mess for work. That's modern witchcraft for you folks. Just what you always imagined, right? So, that's why I was rushing home from Izzy's, eyes twitching, cursing every guy who ever cursed the world with the name Dan. 12:22. Damn. Another thing you need to understand is that magic takes time. We don't just wave a stick and shout, hey presto. There are preparations, steps, and rituals involved. We're trained by our mothers and grandmothers from a young age, so it becomes second nature. But it still takes time and needs to be done carefully. Magic can't be rushed. If you try to hurry through it, you might mispronounce something, mess up your rhythm, or even drop your knife, all of which can mess up the spell in ways you can't even imagine. I once accidentally set fire to my dad's flower beds instead of making them bloom early for Father's Day. Mom has a story about a witch who accidentally flayed her arm while trying to remove a bad tattoo. Though, that might have been a story to scare me out of getting a tattoo. Anyway, you can probably see why I was freaking out about getting home in time. It was around 12:30, and I was just under 10 minutes from home when my thoughts started to get dark. I had been planning to cast a standard sleep replacement spell, or maybe one of my grandma's spells to tidy my room, get the magic out, and then sneak in a few hours of sleep before I had to get up for lectures. But I was starting to take Dan's betrayal personally. Sure, he'd messed over my friend, but honestly, it was my twitchy eye and the gurgles in my stomach that were pushing me to do something about it. I know, typical petty, vengeful witch behavior. You spend 3 days with your guts in turmoil and then tell me you wouldn't want revenge if you had the chance. I was very tempted to see if I could flay his arm. He was supposed to be going on holiday with the girl's family satisfying and thinking about getting back at him tonight. If I didn't do something now, I'd miss my chance. Once he was on a plane, he'd be out of my reach. But no worries, I still had enough time. Someone was going to be running for the toilet tonight, and it wasn't going to be me. 12:38. Home. Just under 2.5 hours. It was going to be close. First things first. Shoes off. I prefer being barefoot when I cast, and lemon and ginger tea to settle my stomach. 1:02. Time to get my kit ready. This is when things get serious. As I mentioned, I'm a classically trained witch, which means I follow a tradition that goes back to when Zeus was a baby and Mother Hecate was teaching her first priestesses the ways of magic, hence the ancient Greek. Witchcraft, as a rule, doesn't really change with the times, so my tools are pretty old school. I unwrapped everything from the goatskin, which I spread out on the only small patch of carpet in my room. Around the goat's head, I placed my bronze knife, my key, and a little serpent statue. The setup was completed by 3 small bronze bowls, each engraved with glyphs much older than Greek. These bowls were passed down from my grandma, and they were the most important things I owned. One bowl went in the center of the circle, and the other 2 were placed at each end, within easy reach. 1:02. I turned off the lights. If I was going to cast 2 spells tonight, I had to hurry. Why not just go straight for making Dan's stomach explode, you ask? Well, I can't stress enough that this was night 2. I had 48 hours of magic built up inside me. When that happens, the power can get pretty desperate to break free, and it might take over completely, throwing itself into one spell at full force. The results can be way worse than intended. That's how flocks of sheep can be killed, or how unseasonal storms can wreck crops, bringing the wrath of the whole village and a nice spot on a pyre. Before I could get to Dan, I needed to cast a spell that would use up all that extra energy. I wanted to give him a bad stomach, not a lifetime of problems.